Hey guys, today we're talking about one of the most important components of fertilizer. I'm going to show you how to make it yourself. It's super simple and it's going to help every plant in your garden, especially your vegetables. So guys, like I said, it's a how-to product. It's super simple to make. We're going to go through every step along the way and every little mistake you might make when making it, which could be detrimental to your garden. So just follow along and I'll show you exactly how to make it. And if you decide not to make it yourself, I'll tell you exactly where you can get it. And it's super, super simple to put together. So guys, what we're talking about in the fertilizer component is the K in NPK, which is potassium, or in this case, it is potash, which is really where the word potassium came from, potash. So guys, there's a very subtle but very important difference between using a fire pit or open burn pit in your yard versus your wood burning stove or fireplace, and I'm going to tell you exactly what that is. That difference is what you're actually burning in a fireplace or a wood burning stove. You're burning the core of the tree, and one reason that fire pits or open burn pits in your yard are so much more critical is you're burning smaller limbs, twigs, leaves, and that has more nutrition in it and more minerals in it in the final product versus using your fireplace. So if you have the option to use one or the other, I would always opt for a fire pit or an open burn pit in your yard where you can get a better concentration of minerals in the final product. So it really only takes a light dusting of your wood ash on your vegetables and it will really make a massive difference. But one important thing I have to say up front is make sure you're not using painted lumber, treated lumber, or any type of thing that might contain any chemicals. You don't want that end up being in your potash, which ultimately would end up in your vegetable garden. Now, your final result in burning will depend on what part of the tree you're burning and whether or not you're burning leaves as well, but you're going to be about 5 to 10% of this will actually be potash once you went through the burning process. So just remember, it goes back to what I said earlier about the core of the tree versus limbs and leaves and twigs. That is so much better in the final product. Now you'll also get about 1.5 to 2% phosphorus and about 25 to 50% calcium in your potash. So another note is not only what part of the tree you're burning, but what type of wood you're burning. Softwood versus hardwood, there's a big difference between the two. Hardwood contains more potassium than your softwood things like pine. So just remember, if you can opt for what type of wood you're burning, you always want to try to lean towards hardwood. I know that's not always possible, but I have a combination of both hardwood and pine, so hardwood and softwood in my yard, and I'm always getting limbs, things that break off during storms, an occasional tree that dies, so I've got an unlimited access amount to both types of trees. Now, acid-loving plants will not benefit from using potash, and it could have a detrimental effect. I'll put down a list down below in the description of things that will benefit from using potash in your vegetable garden, and maybe a few shrubs and other things that will benefit from using potash. Now, potash can increase your yield, your harvest, the quality of your vegetables, the size of them, and also there's a lot of people that swear that potash actually makes their vegetables taste better. Now this is the end of our season, and so the vegetable garden has pretty much gone its way and it no longer exists, but I do have a few vegetables in the greenhouse. But if you don't have a vegetable garden active and you want to still use potash that you might be burning things throughout the winter, you can add potash to your composting pile or composter, and I've got a super simple way to make a composter, and I'll link that up above as well. Now, before you use potash in your garden, you really need to know something that's very critical, and that's your pH level in your garden. You can use a pH tester like one of these. I'll link one down below, but that is a critical, absolutely critical thing that you must do before you add potash to your garden. So on the same topic of pH, potash will raise the pH of your soil. So if you are in an already acidic soil situation, then you don't want to keep adding potash because it could be detrimental to your vegetables and other plants. Vegetables specifically want a neutral to slightly acidic soil. So if you go over to the alkaline and make your soil too sweet, then you're really going to hurt your vegetables and you're not going to have the harvest you hope for. Now, if you've done your pH testing and you know your pH is okay to add potash, then you're perfectly fine to do that. Just remember to lightly add the potash to your vegetables over the growing season and carefully examine. You might actually be better off dedicating maybe a certain percentage of your plants to add potash, and then at the end of the growing season, you'll know whether or not this is something you want to do to the entire garden. But just remember, you don't want to do this to your entire garden the first year. You want to slowly introduce it and then examine the results carefully. So old timers swear by potash on their tomatoes, but the prevailing wisdom today is that potash would make the soil to alkaline, and that's probably some truth in some cases depending on the soil you're starting with. But again, a lot of people from old-time gardeners to new gardeners swear that potash has made their tomato harvest much, much better. Now, when it comes to your tomatoes, I would recommend only using 1 cup per tomato plant, and then you can put it down in the hole before you put in your tomato plant and just see how that works. Do a little bit of experimentation and find out how well it works, but don't forget the most important component is pH testing first. Now, this tomato plant is a determinate variety, and that is what some of the old-time farmers and gardeners said, to only use potash on determinate varieties and not indeterminate varieties. Now, many years ago, when TV actually put documentaries on the boob tube, I saw a documentary about South America and the natives that lived there for thousands of years, and how the soil, which I didn't know was very poor soil in South America around the area where the natives lived. They improved the soil drastically by continually burning in their gardens and increasing the soil quality to a very good level. Sometimes the explorers would go into an area and they would find an area where a garden had existed and the soil was unusually rich in that confined area. So one of the reasons that I understand that potash works so well is each time you do this, you're concentrating the minerals that were in the wood, and they're not destroyed by fire, but they're concentrated in your potash, and it really benefits your garden. So not only are you getting potassium, but you're getting many, many other trace minerals that have been concentrated by this repeated process over and over. Now, one critical step that many people don't do, they kind of forget about this after they've had a burn and they wait till the fire has completely died down and a rain comes through, but they still feel like they can collect the potash that might be a little soggy now. Well, actually, that's not a good idea, because once a rain comes through, a lot of the things that are going to help your garden have already leached into the soil. So just remember, as soon as possible, you want to collect that potash before a rain comes through. So if you want to make a liquid fertilizer from your potash, you'll take 1 part potash and do 4 parts water, add it to a 5-gallon bucket, stir it thoroughly. Then before it has a chance to settle, you scoop out what's in there, add it to a gallon-sized container filled with water, and then water your plants with it. Now, one place you don't want to use this formula, or even just a powdered potash, is on potatoes and, again, acid-loving plants. That's 2 things that it will be detrimental to, so just remember, most of your vegetables will be fine, but acid-loving and potatoes, no, keep it away from that. Now, if you're like me and you just have a never-ending supply of limbs, twigs, leaves, and things like that, and you just have a ton of potash that you can store in 5-gallon buckets, one thing you can use as a natural weed killer, you put this in heavy, heavy doses around weeded areas, sidewalks, walkways, and just put it directly on it, and that will help control your weed problem. Now, there's some debate about this next use of potash, and I have tried it to see if it worked, and I'm not 100% sure, but I have seen some unusual results, maybe less slugs and snails. So you can put this around your vegetables, and some say this will actually help with slugs and snails. I'm not 100% sure it worked as well as some people claims it does, but it's worth a try if you are having a lot of slugs, snails, and things like that around your vegetables, eating them up. Now, not to put too fine of a point on it, but remember not to add potash to your garden if you already have alkaline soil. You want your vegetables and things like that to be as close to a neutral soil or slightly acidic for your best results. So just remember, pH testing is going to be your friend when it comes to potash, and it'll save you a lot of headaches, and it'll keep you from using something that you really shouldn't. Now, if you do have that issue with alkaline soil, there's another workaround there that you can use as a vermicomposter or worm composter. You can add it to that, and it will help break down the nutrients into a simpler form that can be used in your garden, and you don't have to worry about that pH issue at all. So I'll put a link to how to make a vermicomposter or a worm composter, less than $25, and it's super simple to build, but I'll put it right there. So the reason I have this large bucket of mostly oak leaves is that it's a way to neutralize the pH issues in the potash. If you take your leaves and crush them down into a small amount with a lawnmower, make them as small as possible, you can mix the 2 together in your potash, and that will mostly neutralize the issues, and then you're more likely to be able to add it to an already alkaline garden. So guys, another note on adding potash to your garden is old-time gardeners also would actually dust their plants directly with potash, and they swear that that would help with some of the issues with aphids and other insects eating them. And of course, they would eventually get watered and the potash would be washed off. But doing that maybe once a week would help with any possible aphids or anything else that's on your tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, whatever you're growing in your vegetable garden. So guys, I have an unlimited supply of limbs, leaves every year, and I probably have to have at least 2 or 3 very large fires, or I would be sending all of that debris to the local landfill. And I think that's really a waste when you can turn it into something that really benefits your garden rather than contributing to an already large problem. But if you live on a small piece of property and you don't have access to burn a lot of leaves and limbs, you can order potash directly from the internet. I'll put that link down below, and a small amount really goes a long way. So guys, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And there's another thing I want to talk about, which is biochar, which is another component of making potash, and I'll talk about that in a later video. But just to keep an eye out for that video, and I would love it if you would like and subscribe if you found something helpful. And I hope you have a great day.